One of what was expected to be a pretty big panel discussion at CPAC was their minority outreach panel.
Who expected that to be big?
I think that the people who've been pouring $10 million over the past 2 years, that's the number they said, into minority outreach. I think that they expected that after 2 years it would have some payoff at least. But in any event, the panel's called Reaching Out, the Rest of the Story. And we've got a couple of funny little things that happened there. Obviously, it was not a big thing. Let's take a look at the picture showing you what the actual discussion looked like.
I love that picture.
That's
my favorite
not before it was starting or after. That's during it. I don't think there's a human in there aside from the photographer.
Like a WNBA game.
Oh my God.
I just got offended twice. I want you guys to all bear witness. Twice. Thank you, Ben. Go ahead.
Okay. Now, look, I know they made the mistake of holding it in an overly large room, and they perhaps should have thought better of it and realized that nobody at the CPAC Conservative Political Action Conference is going to show up to that outreach to minorities. Like, of course they weren't going to show. Like, you could have held that in a closet and it wouldn't have been full, right? But you have to understand the context.
CPAC might have been full.
Oh, Ben's on fire today. Even so, you understand the context because there was an event right afterwards. It was Wayne LaPierre was speaking. That same room that looks like it's hard to fill.
Overflow.
Overflow from that room. They're like, guns, yes, yes. Minorities, not so much.
One of the fellows of the Brookings Institute, John Hudak, had a good quote comparing the fact that the LaPierre speech was so big. He says, the diversity panel is the path to the party being successful in making inroads into traditionally Democratic groups. If the GOP wants to see the Democratic Party struggle to elect a president, they should win 20% of the African American vote or 50% of the Latino vote. Adding the votes of a few more gun rights supporters won't make the difference in 2016 and 2020 and beyond. I think that seems clear. Yeah, it's great to get them all riled up. They're not voting for Democrats anyway. The gun rights people, I should say.
He's totally right. It's never going to happen because too much of the core of the party doesn't like black people, doesn't like Latin people.
So it's interesting you say that, Ben, exactly. So I guess there was some statement made during the conference that you don't have to lose part of the team to gain more people to the team. But actually, in this case, they would have to do that because there's a significant portion of the traditional GOP base that is rooted in bigotry. And that's just the truth. And I don't think that means that every Republican is racist. Of course not.
No, not at all.
But they've got to decide how they want to align on this issue moving forward. And, you know, the country is certainly browning, and you've got to address. And look, I'm just tired of them toying with the concept of minority outreach. You know, we see Rand Paul going to Howard University. We see opening these ridiculous little community centers with nothing in it. And then you see this. You know, just get on or get off the bus. You know, either you want to be serious about it and really try to make some real inroads in terms of political agenda of minority communities, or just say, you know what, it's a wash, and move on to another group that you think you can have, you know, progress in.
Maybe like a whitewash.
Basically.
Exactly. But a great example of their inability to at least even hide their contempt for these communities came up when Robert Woodson is a GOP strategist, and he got into a tense little scuffle, I guess, with another one of the members of the panel, and it had to do with Democrats sort of buying support from minority communities. So let's watch that.
We do have to make some investments. I think one of the frustrations that I see from our perspective, and I know there are solutions, is that the Democrats using nonprofits and going into these communities have lots of goodies to offer.
Exactly.
And our guys aren't exactly in the offering goodies business. And so it's harder for us to go in and do the same kind of thing. What can we do? And I know you have experience with this.
Well,
with our nonprofits.
but I think you make, I have to challenge, it's not goodies. It bothers me when people assume that low-income people respond to gifts, food stamps or things that are given to them. Nobody wants to be dependent. So let's assume that people want a hand up and not a handout. What liberals do is at least they express their concern. Whether what they do is helpful or harmful, they show up.
That's right. That's right. And that is, you know, and that is the reason why the change in language isn't going to work. That is a foreign concept. When he says nobody wants a handout, that crowd of 8 people who attended that hearing, they're thinking, no, they want a handout. And yeah, you show up, you have some understanding. Like, it's not an accident. Black people aren't dumb, right?
Thank you for that, Ben. I appreciate it.
Believe me, if you weren't here, I would not have said that.
I know.
Like, they got it. Like, they know as much better than anybody else whether all the Great Society plans and the New Deal plans worked. but they didn't not totally work. Many of them did work, and what they got was they heard FDR, and you hear JFK, and you heard LBJ once he made his significant changes, and you're like, okay, these guys are moderately interested in what's happening, whether it works or not, and they get nothing from the other side.
Yeah, it's a lesser of two what feels like unfair situations. And then also, I can't stand this myth. Everyone should know that the largest benefactors of our entitlement programs, food stamps, welfare, whatever, are actually white Americans.
Right.
So I don't know why that is still a false narrative out there being promoted. Anyways.
So, two things about that. Number one is that actually the biggest beneficiary of entitlements are multinational corporations, right?
Okay.
So the oil subsidies and the list goes on
But
and
those
on.
aren't goodies, though.
Oh,
They're giving
yeah.
business.
Right. No, but that's, of course, literally exactly what they are. And that crony capitalism and the goodies that are handed out to the rich and the powerful are what's actually killing our budget. So, but that's exactly why the question was framed in the way that it was, because it's projection. Everything they do is projection, right? So they feel like, well, we get goodies. The rich and the powerful get goodies. So I guess you think you're getting goodies, and that's why you're voting for them, because that's why we vote for Republicans, because they give us goodies, right? Like subsidies and contracts and no bid contracts, et cetera, et cetera. And then look at that framing of that question. How can anybody support Republicans? How could African Americans support Republicans? When the framing of the question at the panel is, well, what are we going to do to get these black votes when all they want is goodies?
Right.
Right? Well, you're not going to get it that way.
That's how you do it.